never been without a dog. Before I was born, my parents had dogs, so every time, we were always a multi-dog family. Every time one passed, we go and, rescue a shelter dog. And so I've been around them, my whole life.
Hi, welcome to the Bully Girl Magazine podcast. I'm Gigi, and today I'm with two very special guests, Peggy Crooks and Brugger. Welcome, Peggy.
Hi, thank you. It's a pleasure to be on here.
It's a pleasure to have you as our guest. Please introduce us to Brugger. He's such a handsome boy, such a big boy.
Thank you. Yes, this is Brugger. He is almost a year old. He will be a year on March 17th, so a couple weeks away. He is 23 inches tall already and a little over 100 pounds. We kept some weight off him just because he had some growing pains as a puppy, but he's a big boy. He comes from some really heavy lines in the XL bully world. So, but this is our sweet boy.
Does he compete? Does he go to shows?
We haven't yet. The only reason is because he's Merle. So a lot of the shows that we've been going to, we just started this whole show world within the last year. It's been really exciting, me and my husband. But since he's Merle, he can't show in the typical ABKC, WBA, that kind of stuff. So we actually found a couple other kennel clubs that do allow Merles. And his first show is going to be, I believe it's in May in Ontario, California. So yeah, so my husband wants to show him. So he's practicing with him. We have his full sister, the litter mate, who is a pied color. So she's black and white with the tri-tan colors. But she's been showing ABKC and she's already got 45 points. So we're really excited about that. Yeah. So she can finally show in the XL world. But since he's been Merle, his sister was the practice. So we have a lot of shows this year. It's really exciting for 2024, but we will be showing
him. I love that. Go Brugger. We'll be cheering for him. We'll be rooting for him. Okay. Oh, such a handsome boy. So Peggy, you're a dog trainer. Tell us about you.
Yeah. So, I actually started, I've never been without an animal, never been without a dog. Before I was born, my parents had dogs, so every time, we were always a multi-dog family. Every time one passed, we'd go and, rescue a shelter dog. And so I've been around them, my whole life. So as I was growing up, kind of in my high school years and stuff, I thought it was funny that a lot of people would come to me and, ask me for vet advice. And I'm like, guys, I'm not a vet, but because I just had so much experience with them and I knew how to work with them. What, buddy? You getting bored? So people would come to me for advice. And I started just kind of working with them more. I got my background at school. I got my background in psychology. So I worked a lot with behavior. And I just started training friends, family dogs. I know, puppy, that's enough. I started training just, as a hobby and for free. But it kind of turned into this, full-time business that we started running. It actually in 2019 was when I opened up my own business. So started, I launched my website, and then COVID hit, of course. So my hours cut. And, I was still, getting paid full time, but I was getting bored. So that's where it gave me the opportunity to, I actually applied at PetSmart to be a dog trainer. And that was the first time that I had done it, quote unquote, professionally, instead of just a hobby. And it was just so much fun to me. It kind of opened up. I work with a lot of different tools. I consider myself a balanced trainer, meaning we do, the positive reinforcement side of things, but we also, use tools that a lot of people will look at it as aversive, but I look at them as communication tools. So, the PetSmart side of things was very positive reinforcement only. And that actually, it kind of, brought me out of my comfort zone, because sometimes when you're using all kinds of different tools, you can kind of start to rely on them too much. And so to just have treat lures and, trying to just really pay attention to the animal, that was really good. Now, some of the cases, obviously, like positive reinforcement only wasn't going to fix, major reactivity or aggression or anything like that. But it really just kind of, it advanced that skill that I had. And so after that, I worked there for, I think, a little less than a year. It was, a quick little thing, but I really wanted to just focus on building my business. And so I did. I just started, my prices low. I started doing private sessions. with people and their dogs, just kind of going to their homes and working with all kinds of different tools, what people were comfortable with, what I was comfortable with. And then it kind of turned into we moved from San Diego to Temecula, and we got a lot more property, and it turned into just a bigger business. And so about a year and a half ago is when I kind of cut my corporate job. But yeah, I know. I cut my corporate job and started, going part time and then full time business, and now I just do this full time. So, and I kind of want to transition now. A lot of my training is, obedience and behavior mods. Come here, Bubba. And come here. Oh shit, big boy. Come here.
Oh my, I love him.
I know, he's a sweetheart. I do a lot of obedience and behavior modification, but I really want to get more into, which is why we're starting to do confirmation more. We're his tail. We're doing more of the show world, and so I'm hoping that this year I can start to transition to, rather than not that I'm going to stop helping, pet owners, but because I would love to do that, in our future. Any puppies that go to pet homes, I want to be there for them for the life of the dog, but I also want to start helping professional breeders, like established breeders. I find it kind of amazing that breeders have to be almost like their own vet and their own trainer, and they do everything for these puppies. But to continue that into the dog's adult life, so I want to be more of a mentor for breeders as far as the training aspects go.
Okay, so that's so amazing. Congratulations on everything.
Thank you.
So tell us about how you told us how you started training dogs. Do you train all sorts of breeds?
Yes. Yeah. So that's actually a common question. I always thought it was like a silly question, but it's very common. I get that a lot. Because especially with my Instagram, I see, or I post a lot of, these bully breeds, because this is just what my passion is. I love all dogs, but I just have a big heart for the bullies. But people see me post it a lot on my Instagram. And so they're like, oh, you train pit bulls, you train bullies, blah, 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 and they think, oh, great. Like I found the perfect trainer. But in reality, I mean, I train chihuahuas, I train poodles, I train, all kinds of dogs. And so occasionally most of the time I get the bullies a lot. Shepherds, I'll get those. I've had a couple of Rottweilers. So like the big, like mean looking dogs, everybody's like, oh, you work with them. Perfect. But no, like it's all dogs. I think there is something to kind of just take note of as far as different breeds. It's like every breed has their own personality and quirks and stuff like that. There are some differences from breed to breed, but I think the important note here is that every dog is different. Yes, you can look at, Weimaraners, Vizslas, Shepherds, they're all high energy dogs that are, working dogs. And then you can get into like English bulldogs and, some others that are kind of more, some English bulldogs are crazy too, but, more laxed, kind of stubborn, less apt to work for you type of breeds. So yeah, there is a difference in some, but I think it's really important to note that every dog is different, every personality. You are a little worm sliding off this couch. Come here.
He's like, nah, I'm out of here.
I know. He's camera shy.
I love
but
him.
Yeah, I do work with all kinds of different breeds, because it's not just, the breed you have to pay attention to. It's the personality. Like I said, my background's in psychology. So I kind of look more at what makes the dog happy, what makes them want to work for you. Is it food? Is it love and affection? Is it toy drive? How can we make it fun for the dog? And every dog is different. And that kind of going back to the tools aspect of it, some people are like, ooh, e-collars, prong collars, those are bad. And really everything you use is a tool. It's as long as you use it correctly. I don't see a problem with any of it. And it has to fit the dog. I've had dogs that don't like e-collars or prong collars, and I won't use it. It's too much pressure for them, even at the lowest reading. But every dog is different. So yeah, I train all kinds of different breeds, and I do like the diversity. I mean, I love my bullies, but I like the diversity of different dogs. So, people with small dogs, send them my way, because I only get small dogs once in a blue moon.
So what do you think about this? Like here in Argentina, they say like small dogs are like the ones that are always like the grumpiest. What do you think of that?
Well, that's actually a interesting point, because On the surface, yeah, I would agree. But why do I agree? It's because any dog can have the same problems, right? But a bully, if there's a big bully breed or just large breed in general, even Great Danes, if you're having problems with reactivity where the dog is lunging on leash, you can't just pick your dog up and leave, right? It's heavy. It's a lot of work to pull back, and it's also very, very noticeable. You get a Chihuahua or a Shih Tzu or something that's yippy on the leash, those owners are just going to keep walking and drag their dog with them. And it's not as loud and messy and ugly and scary. So I think the reason a lot of small dogs have this stigma where they've got the big dog mentality, right? I think it's because all owners, should be held responsible for their dog's actions. But with small dogs, it's easier to just pick them up and walk away from the problem. And what you're doing there, if you do pick them up and walk away, you're just enabling them. You're making it, they're getting the attention they want. That's a whole nother story with reactivity, like why dogs will do that and how you're encouraging it without knowing and all that kind of stuff. And but I do think that a lot
Yeah.
of little dogs have these issues because it's easier to just slap a band-aid on it and call it a day versus a larger dog. It's a lot more responsibility. That dog could pull you over and or pull the leash out of your hand and go run and start a
Yeah.
fight, cause a lot more damage. Although I have seen some Chihuahuas do some pretty gnarly damage in the bike world.
Right.
We do
Right. And it's like what you're telling us is like family therapy. Like the dog is
it.
very
So
related to the owner, right?
yes, it absolutely is. And that's funny that you mentioned that too, because I feel like trainers are also somewhat of family therapists because it's not so much training the dogs. It's training the people on, how to handle the dog, what they're doing right versus wrong, how to communicate with your dog really. And it's funny because a lot of couples, it's very, very common for me to go to somebody's house and these couples are, arguing about, I told you not to do this. And I told you to, do that with the dog. And so I'm like, okay, guys, let's take a step back. It's okay. Like you can argue about this on your own time, but let's focus on the dog here. Like, so
Right.
yeah.
Oh, I love that. Okay. Do you have favorite students? For example, I was a teacher for 13 years and I did have secretly lots of favorite students.
Right.
Do you have some?
That's really funny. This was a good question. One of my favorites because it is true. I do have favorites. I don't like to play favorites, but let me tell you, the favorites are not so much like, oh, I love your dog or, a certain personality. My favorite students are the clients that put in the work and that love their dog to no end, right? That really just like you can tell they're they're working so hard to better their dog and putting in that time and effort because training is a lot. It's, a lot of people want to get a dog. And I mean, maybe like 10 years ago, you could have done this where you could have got like a nice mutt from the shelter and let it stay in the yard and keep the coyotes at bay. And it was probably a great dog. But I think there's a big problem in the dog industry right now with overbreeding, backyard breeders, bad trainers, bad owners. It's become this business where people think, you can just make money from it. It's easy. You're just hanging out with the dogs. Hey, good boy. But it's I like the owners that put in that time and realize it's like a child. I think one of the biggest problems that people have caused in the dog world is babying their dogs and humanizing them so much.
Mm-hmm.
They're still animals. Meow, blah, blah. Okay, your turn. Lexi, come.
Oh
This is my
my.
dog.
Wait, who
She's
is this?
This is Lexi. She's 7. She is not part of our breeding program. She was my backyard bred dog, like way back in the day. That I just fell in love with her face. She's got the worst allergies, but the sweetest personality. She's she likes to be the star of the show too. Um,
Yeah.
Thank you. So, uh,
You were
oh,
telling
my favorite
me
students.
about the
My
favorite
favorite
students. Yeah.
students are the ones that actually, put in the time and the effort with their dogs because it is more than just loving your dog. Love is not enough. We have humanized these dogs and taught them to be babies. And, that's a whole nother story too, genetics versus their upbringing. But humanizing them is the worst thing you can do. I hear people say, you know, crates are bad and leaving your dog outside is bad. And they're den animals. Of course they want a crate. They want a safe space to go into it. If you use it as a punishment, yeah, that's probably bad. But I mean, it's really just providing an animal with their basic needs. being outdoors, allowing them to sniff and go mark on their own territory, leaving them in the backyard, getting some sun. Is that really bad? I don't think so. As long as they're not, neglected, they've got food and water, they've got shelter, that kind of stuff. It's there. People have lost this idea of dogs being animals. They wouldn't, well, I guess there are some, people that enjoy their cats like children too, but, you wouldn't go get a snake or a mouse or even a horse. I see a lot of farm animals out here in Temecula, a horse and a goat. Actually grew up around those kinds of animals. We didn't quite have a farm, but we did have a lot of large animals like that. And you learn to respect them because they are a lot larger than you, and they don't communicate like humans, So animals can really, we are superior as humans because we have like our brain, we have this knowledge that animals don't. They don't necessarily think like we do. They can't think analytically, but that's where you start to this is like tying it into psychology of working with dogs, is you really start to, respect what they are capable of, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I just like humanizing dogs, and there's a reason there's a lot of reactivity. This is the most common thing that people come to me to for training is reactivity, meaning it looks like aggression on leash, behind a fence, that kind of stuff. It's because they were babied, they were sheltered, and
Mm-hmm.
this is a common thing that I tell people too is, look at the dogs of the world. What is the best dog you've seen? Is it the dog that has a beautiful backyard with a pool and all the food in the world, free fed, all the love, gets to spend time in bed? Or is it a homeless person's dog, right? Somebody who is, left to the streets and has that. Those dogs are the most not maintained, but what's the word I'm looking for?
Yes,
They
I
sit there,
understand.
observe the world. They're not reactive. They watch cars. They don't bark. They just lay there without a leash. And why? Because they're not sheltered. They've seen things. They're used to traffic, trash trucks, people riding bikes, strollers, kids running, they see it all. And so the biggest thing, I get people all the time that they say, how do I get my dog to stop doing this? Whether it's chewing up shoes, chewing up, the house, or digging or escaping or whatever. And I feel like a lot of trainers, because I get people that have been to other trainers and it didn't work. So they come to me as, a last resort before taking their dog to the shelter. And I said, has anybody asked you to just let your dog be? Go to a park on a leash and just let them sit there. It's okay if they cry for a minute, just let them cry it out, go to sleep and just be. No, everybody has this solution to all these problems. And,
Mm-hmm.
it's not like, yes, there are a lot of solutions out there. We can do, A, B, and C to get this thing to go away, this behavior to disappear. But we're focusing too much on the problem when like if we open our minds, it's kind of like meditating, a lot of
Yeah.
people, they're just too, their head is clouded. They've overworked themselves or whatever. Um, go and just go float in some water or sit there and listen to some calming music or whatever. The same thing for the dogs. They need that too. If we're constantly trying to train them and make them do things to, and when they're already upset with, whatever it may be, um, because there's obviously a
Yeah.
reason your dog's digging, trying to escape, barking at another dog, whatever. It's too much for their brain sometimes. And that is the number
Mm-hmm.
one thing that I'll tell people, go do with your dog. Just take them to a park, take a book, or, I don't care if you're scrolling through Instagram, just go to a park, put your dog on a leash, give them a bone or something to chew, whatever their favorite thing is, and just don't give them 10 million things to work with, because then they're going to get bored. We live in such a fast paced environment with people too. It's like, play video games. We watch commercials every, 2 seconds. It
Yeah.
feels like everything is just so fast paced. It's the same thing with dogs.
Overstimulation.
Exactly. It's
Mm-hmm.
overstimulation. And if you have, 10 different toys to choose from, you're not going to learn to just let it go and slow down. And so that's what I tell people with their dogs in crates. Give them one thing, that they have access to in case they are bored. Sure, let them chew. That's a natural thing that they need to do. But go to a park and sit there or go to a winery. That's what I do. I take all my clients' dogs. They come with me to the winery. Everybody knows me as the dog lady there, because I just go out there and I read a book or I'm doing work, on the computer, and I just let my dog lay there. They get a toy or a treat to just kind of gnaw on. And after about, depending on the dog, after about, 15 minutes, they tend to just lay down and go to sleep, use boredom
I
to
love
its
that.
advantage. So
Yeah. I love what you're saying. You're absolutely right about homeless people's dogs, and that's the reason is right there. They see everything. They are just being themselves.
Right.
Were there any situations in which you had to decline training a dog, and why?
Um, yeah, there's been a couple. And so it's not so much that like there has been some where it's, somebody comes to me and they're like, can I'm looking for a trainer for my service dog, right? And I can get somebody in that direction, okay, to get the dog to, do you a service, whether it's opening doors or bringing you medication or whatever, if that's kind of what you're looking for. But if it's a full on, guide dog or something like that, it's just kind of out of my realm. I think that people fail to look at dog trainers with their specialties. If you're looking for a good pet home, or a good dog to be a pet, look at pet trainers, basic obedience, that's fine. Any dogs with aggression, look for behavior modification specialists, or they call them behaviorists, which hit or miss with the term. That's a gray area between dog trainer and behaviorist, because I feel like a dog trainer should be a behaviorist looking at the behaviors of the dog, why it's happening, why you have a problem to be able to change that. So yeah, I
Mhm.
mean, if somebody's looking to do like massive sports with me that I'm not, I haven't had enough practice, I could get you in the right direction, but I just don't feel right about like morally right to charge you for a service like that when I haven't done it for, 15 plus years like I have behavior. Um, but the other thing too that's important to note is I've had people, I always offer free evaluations. So I think that's really important. There are some people that charge for their evaluations, and I get it. Time is money. And if you're driving all over the place, that's you're wasting gas if you don't end up with that client. But I just think it's so important to connect with your trainer, get to know them, let them get to know your dog. You're not going to know everything about a dog in 30 minutes to an hour, but if you don't connect with the person that's training your dog, or, like we said, is training you, um, it's not going to go anywhere, because it's like a teacher. It can make or break a class, right? It If you don't understand what they're saying, if they can't portray that information in a way that you understand, you're not going to be successful in the long run, and you're just going to be wasting your money. So there have been people that I just don't click with myself. And for trainer, I think it's really important for trainers too to look at that as it's almost like an interview when you're doing your evals. Um, if you don't click with the person, they may love you, but if you don't want to take on this case, whatever it may be, dog trainer burnout is real, and it is really, really hard to come back from that. During COVID, that's when I saw the spike in reactive dogs and aggression cases.
Oh,
Because again, going back to socialization, like they were, these shelter
yeah.
puppies that couldn't go anywhere, and they didn't
Mhm.
get exposed to anything. And so I took on a lot of aggressive cases, and it was tough. It's not only can it be scary, right? You've got this dog that potentially is a bite risk, but also just how long it takes. Reactivity is, way different than obedience training. It's not a sit down stay. It's a let's train your mind to think about things differently. If you're afraid of something or you're angry at something, why is that? And how can we create the stimulus to be a more positive experience? Um, so yeah, I definitely got burnt out for a while there. I was taking on a lot of shelter dogs from rescues and stuff that had these problems that couldn't get adopted because of these problems, and they were bully breeds too. And they so going back to the shelter dogs, that's kind of what also built up my business. Getting my name out there. But we had a dog that I knew I couldn't find a home for, and I ended up adopting her. Her name was Abby, and I tell everybody this story. I was her human. I was the only thing that she ever liked, right? So, but it just became such a small world with her because this was genetic. This was something that couldn't change. It took us 3 years just to make any sort of progress. But even my husband didn't really trust her. We were trying to start a family, so we wouldn't trust her around kids. We couldn't go anywhere because she tried to attack the dog sitter. She went to the vet, tried to attack the vet. I mean, I'd have her muzzled and stuff, but um, we ended up having to put her down, and that was kind of like it was really hard for me because putting a dog down that is like quote unquote healthy, right? Her mind wasn't healthy, but her body was, and I've never had to make that decision because all my dogs I've kept into their teens, unless it was a tragic accident or something. But we've always kept our animals until their senior ages. And so that was really tough. And I couldn't take on any more aggressive cases at that point because of her for a long time. This was, I want to say like 2 years ago now. But that that
Yeah.
if I, I had to turn away some of those clients for a while. And it was amazing just to like feel that like come back from the burnout, like, wow, it's so amazing to get a puppy that somebody's like actually putting in the money and the time and the effort to like get these dogs started on the right foot, which I think is really, really important these days. I mean, it's always important, but especially now.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so yeah, I've had to turn down a couple of aggressive cases because of burnout. I've had to turn down cases that, I just wasn't well versed in, and I just don't feel right charging somebody for something that I don't have more than 5 years of experience doing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then the people too that, you don't click with, it's to prevent that burnout. So yeah, there's
Mm-hmm.
a couple. And I think that anybody who doesn't turn down certain people are either new trainers, or broke. Because now, it's a really slow time for the business. Like in the dog world, the winter time is always the slowest. It's starting to pick up again, but there has been some cases
Yeah.
where I'm like, man, I really don't want to take this on, or I just don't think it's a good fit, but had to. So that's part of it too. But yeah.
Yes, and I think that's being a good professional, like, okay, this is what you need. I do this, and that. So I,
Right.
I imagine you can refer them to someone that
Oh,
that
absolutely.
does the other. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I always do that too. If I can't fix something, I always have, people I can refer them to, or I try to, um, because I mean, they call me for guidance, and like, I know it's free talking on the phone, but, I still I'm in it to help dogs and help people. And so if I
yeah.
can even just give them 5 minutes of, hey, here's this phone number, call them, ask these questions, whatever. And I always tell people, interview your trainers. You should be. So.
Yeah. So what's something bully owners should know when raising puppies?
Bully owners, I feel like they definitely, this goes for any breed too. I think that they should research the breed. Okay, because like going back to what we had said earlier about like each breed is different, but also it's a different personality in any dog, but there still holds some genetic truth to certain breeds, right? So bully breeds, depending on the bully breed, I love the bully world just because there's so much diversity in it. You've got your French bulldogs, English bulldogs, American bullies, pit bulls, all that kind of stuff. But researching that specific breed, what is the general consensus? Are they family lazy dogs? Or are they working dogs? A true American Pit Bull Terrier is a working dog. They are high energy, athletic, and they need something to do most of the time. You might get lucky with a couple that are lazy, but usually, like going back to the roots of that dog, what the true American Pit Bull Terrier was, those are higher energy versus an American Bully was bred to just kind of be more of a family dog and laid back. So I think that new bully owners definitely, before you buy a puppy, um, I think they need to do research. I see a lot of people getting dogs in general without doing their research, and they end up taking the dog to the shelter because either, the breeder won't take it back, or, a rescue. In my case, I've worked with a lot of shady rescues, and I've pulled these dogs to help train them and rehome them. And then the rescue ghosts me because they say, oh, the dog's in a good place. She's not going to take it to the shelter. So then it's a personal rescue mission. So yeah, these dogs end up in shelters because everybody failed them. So definitely
Mm-hmm.
doing your research ahead of time. When I was younger, going back to all my animal experiences when I was a kid, I wanted a mouse or a hamster or something, and my parents would not let me have any animal without proving to them that I did my research, almost like a book report at home. I had to show them, like,
Mm-hmm.
look, these are the needs, these are the cage requirements or the feeding requirements or handling exercises, all that stuff. I think it's really important that, adults too these days, there's a lack of the research, and I think that will help prevent them getting into a situation where they have to get rid of the dog. Um,
Yeah.
and also early exposure, the earlier the better. And this is kind of one of those that a lot of people feel stuck on because, especially young puppies, if they don't have all their vaccines, they feel like they can't go out in public, right? But I think the biggest thing to note for that is you can take your dog in public, but don't put them on a high traffic ground where there's a lot of other dogs, even a lot of foot traffic, human foot traffic. You can carry bacteria and viruses on the bottom of your shoes. And so, going to a place that's less busy, wide open. Put your puppy on a long line and go out, in the woods or something. Now, I will say, this is my disclaimer here, because I have heard of cases, where somebody lived in, a woodsy area where there was like very few neighbors, and one of their puppies did get parvo. And it's their vet said,
Oh.
that unfortunately, like, parvo's everywhere, or can be anywhere. And so that
Mm-hmm.
it's still taking precautions, right? Don't let them eat things off the ground, which is hard for puppies because they want to put everything in their mouths. Don't let them lick, any liquid on the ground, whether that's like stagnant water, anything that's bad, for them. Anything they tromp through, take them home and just take a baby wipe and wipe down their feet and everything. That will help. I usually tell people, because we live in the city, take your puppy to the pet stores, but put them in the cart. Wipe down the cart and then put them in the. Don't let them on the ground. Um, there's all kinds of ways that we can expose our dogs, get them used to these things without, um, you know, getting them, I want to say exposed, but I just use the word, like being exposed to experiences versus, bacteria and stuff like that. Get a carrier
Yeah.
for your puppy, if you want to put them in a little space backpack, if they're small enough. It is harder for the bully dogs, because they grow really fast and they are big. But again, take your cart, or if you have a wagon, take them for a walk in the wagon, just get them used to sounds and sights and smells. And it's going to help so much more when they're older. Another
I love
important
that.
thing, raising a puppy, when you do get a puppy, these breeders have them from 8 to 12 weeks old, or maybe even longer. And if it's a good breeder, they'll do the early neurological stimulation, all that kind of stuff to help them deal with stress later.
Mhm.
But every single puppy, it does not matter the breed, size, it doesn't matter. Every puppy goes through a bunch of fear periods. They'll go through 3 2-year-old phases. Okay. This is the secret. No. um, 6 months, 1 year, and 2 years old, that you might see, give or take a couple of months. Every dog is different, but you might see a change in your puppy's behavior, being a little bit more naughty. That's why I call it the 2-year-old phases, right? So, these puppies will come from breeders, like good breeders, and they'll be angels up until, 6, 7 months, and they're starting to chew on things. And the most important thing to note for that is just stay consistent with your training. If you stay consistent, you set those boundaries, don't give them an inch, because they'll take a mile. Don't let them get away with anything. If you say no, you better mean no. If you say get off the couch, you better mean get off the couch. If you say it once, they
Mhm.
don't listen, get up and do something about it. I like to say, my aunt told me this a long time ago. I like to say, teach from your feet, not your seat. So instead of continuing to yell at them or call for them or whatever, get up, go over to the dog, so you have that physical control to show them what you want them to do instead. And just keep those boundaries in place throughout, the first year or two of their lives, and you're going to have an amazing adult, because it's just normal. I mean, they're not robots like a lot of people want them to be. They're living beings that change with their environment. They change with the way that they're raised, so you kind of have to go with the flow. And um,
I loved that phrase, teach from your feet, not from your seat. I
yeah,
love it.
yeah.
So tell us, what is some advice, as a trainer, you could give to owners or handlers in the show ring?
Yes, I like this one. So again, I'm new to showing, but we've done it for the last year or so. And what I can take from the ring, like what I've seen people struggle with, is getting their dog to either be okay with the judges touching them, right? So that's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Get your dog exposed to as much as you can. Take them out. I mean, start young, 5, even 4 or 5 months old. Take them out and let strangers pet them. And there's a fine line between letting your dog say hello to everybody on leash and practicing for the ring, getting stranger hands on them. When you take your dog out in public and they're on leash and people either come up unannounced or they ask you and you say, yeah, you can pet my dog. I'm not a huge fan of letting everybody pet them. We have to be an advocate for our dog in that sense. This is where reactivity kind of stems from sometimes. Can be the sweetest puppy, like Ruger was, oh, love and attention and belly rubs. But sometimes we miss those little cues as far as our pet being insecure. And if we don't stand
Mm-hmm.
up for them and be their bodyguard sometimes, for lack of better words, they start to learn to be their own bodyguard, right? So that's where they give a little growl or a little nip or something, and then that person
Mm-hmm.
moves away, and that's reinforcing that behavior. So then it gets louder, more scary, that kind of thing. So it's not going to public and allowing our dog to be pet by everybody. It's going out in public with our dog, not letting just somebody come pet them. But if they approach us and they say, hey, can I pet your dog? You could say something like, you know what? She's in training right now, or he's in training. If you want to pet him, can you do me a favor and just pet on the back? I'm going to put her in a stand here, whatever your term is. I use hold for the show ring. So when we're stacking and we're putting their feet in the proper place, I tell them to hold, and it teaches them, I use a treat lure to have them look forward. So everything is nice and straight in that box position. And I tell people, rub along her back and pet her backside, right? That will also help, because here's another kind of advice slipped in here. A lot of people naturally teach their new puppy how to sit. It's the first thing people want their dog to do is sit. When you're going to show in confirmation, don't do what I did, because I did. And then as soon as the judge comes back and feels those hips, that pressure on the hips, boom, she sits down, right? I don't want that. I want her to stand. So I want her to understand that, any pressure on the body, you still got to stand still. So it's desensitizing pressure. So that would be a good thing for them to, go out into public and if people want to pet your dog, sure, but on your terms and the way you want it done. They shouldn't be up in their face. Oh, you're so cute. None of that. I don't like that for my personal dogs. But yeah, petting around the backside. If you don't know how to counter train a sit out of a dog, right? So like my dog knew how to sit from the breeder. She came to us at 10 weeks old, I think, 10 or 11. And she already knew how to sit. They already knew their names, everything. So that was great. I loved that, but I had to train it out of her. So if you already have a dog that sits a lot, teach a stand. So you take a treat in front of their nose and literally just pull it forward. Come on. She's on the couch. But if you, right there, that treat lure, and you pull it forward and slow and precise. So they're going to lean forward and pop their butt up when they're on the ground. She's still sitting because she's a good girl.
We love her.
But yeah, teach a stand, and that will help. And then really desensitize that pressure on the butt. And that will help with the judge. And then the other thing too, I think, is when a dog is looking forward, you want them to look forward. Stop scratching. Thank you. You want them to look forward so that the angles are right, because if they look at you for the treat, it throws their angles off a little bit, and a judge might look at something as a fault that's not a fault. So I use a mirror at home. And again, I'm still learning the confirmation, the proper foot placement and everything, but I like to use a mirror so that I can look at the mirror to spot myself. But the dog, eye contact is very rewarding. Please stop. Thank you. So when you look at them, if you engage with them and look at them in the eyes, it's very rewarding, and they tend to want to continue to look at you. So I see a lot of dogs in the ring, because obviously people showing their dogs spend a lot of time with them, engagement and training and all that kind of stuff, which is great. But when you have too much eye contact, then they keep wanting to look at you. And in the obedience ring, it's great. But in the confirmation world, you don't want that. You want them to stare ahead. So that's why I started using a mirror, so that I can spot myself without looking at my dog, because that's what people are doing. They're looking at their dog, making sure they're in the right spot and everything. And then the dog looks up at them and it's like, oh, I'm doing good. And it's, yes, you are, but I want you to look forward, So there's a lot of other tricks that breeders will tell you, or other show people will tell you. But I think from an obedience standpoint, from a dog trainer standpoint, use a mirror. It's literally the simple thing of engagement. That eye contact is really rewarding for them. So take that away just a little bit, on the confirmation when you're trying to get them to stack, and have them stack in front of a mirror so you can spot them, and only reward when they're looking straight forward. And
that's great advice. Yeah. That's great. Okay. One exciting project that is coming up for you is your own kennel. Yes. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So, as a dog trainer, I have my Cruise and Canine Academy business. But I feel like I've come full circle in the dog world. I have rescued, rehabilitated, and I really have always wanted to get into breeding, and I really wanted to do it right. And I met a couple of bully breeders that have been just amazing mentors. And I always thought breeding would be like a retirement job for me, but it kind of is becoming a reality in my younger years. So our kennel, my husband wanted to name our kennel Working Class Bullies. So it's new and upcoming. We only have 3 dogs in our program right now, but really exciting stuff. Our girl that we've shown already a couple of times, her name is Panda, and she is our foundation female. So she's our only female we have, and she won't be ready to breed until about another year. But we already have some exciting plans for her with another breeder. I think he's in New Mexico. Triple shot bullies. This one's for you. um, we've been discussing, and I won't say who, but we've been discussing one of his studs, and we're still really excited about that. I think it's going to be an incredible pair. So I think in 2025 will be our first litter. Um, this year, we're just kind of focusing on raising our puppies that we do have. And I also have Ruger's uncle. He's sleeping right now in his crate, but I have an uncle that came to me last summer. So he's already an adult. But he needed a little bit of help in the anxiety department. And so he came to me, and we've really focused this whole time on, just behavior, because he's got amazing genetics, great genetics, sweetest dog ever, but had a little bit of fear that kind of developed into this anxiety. And so we really just built up his confidence, and I think that he's ready. So my goal is his first show in May, and to get his name out there for, to stud him out. And then Ruger will be ready when he turns a year, technically. So we're taking early lock-ins for him too. He's developing really nicely. I can't wait to see him at 2 years. So I think 2025 will be our debut, but right now we're trying to just get our name out there and meet other breeders to see if they want to collab with us and make our dream come true. And yeah, it's really exciting to actually have this dream become a reality, because I've always wanted to do this, but I wanted to do it right. So this is a thing that kind of sets us apart from the rest. Not just the training aspect. I feel like, we've got that a lot of breeders don't have. A lot of breeders know the early training that needs to be done with puppies less than 12 weeks. But the behavioral aspect of it, we have that long-term support. But also, OFA testing. There's not a lot of bully breeders right now that do that, especially in the XL bully game, because a lot of these dogs will fail. So our goal, our 10-year goal down the line is we really want these dogs to pass. I really want some passing scores. And I know that every breed has their own, quirks. And, some dogs are more prone for hip dysplasia and heart disease and stuff like that. But our goal is to get the healthiest dogs possible. I really want to help this community have passing OFA scores, passing health scores. I really encourage everybody out there. I don't care if they don't pass. We are all very aware that they don't pass. But what I'm hearing a lot in the bully community is, these dogs don't pass their hits or elbows or whatever. And they did the testing, but they didn't pass. And so they don't report those scores. And then they just tell, the consumer, we just didn't do testing, which is really unfair, because I try to be a big educator, right? Like, not just in training dog behavior, but about certain breeds, being an advocate for breeds and dogs in general, and trying to just bring this awareness that, yeah, they are larger breeds. It is really hard to find a large breed dog that doesn't have joint problems. That's just how it is. The larger dog you get, the less lifespan you have with them, unfortunately. But that's our goal, in the next 10 to 15 years, is really just create our own bloodline that has consistent hips and elbows and stuff like that. So our dogs will be OFA tested. We've done Embark so far with everybody. Those came back clear, so that's fun. But we still are in the process. Again, money's been tight here, but we do want to, before we do any breedings, we want to OFA test these dogs. Whether they pass or fail, they are going to be posted, reported to OFA, possibly pen hip as well. But I really just encourage people to test their dogs, whether they pass or not. It's common that these dogs don't pass, but if we don't test them, how do we know what dogs to breed those with to get passing scores in the future? So it's not something that should be hidden. I think that's what sets, the responsible breeders apart from the rest is, and not that there are some responsible breeders out there that I have seen, do the testing and they're kind of nervous to post results or nervous to tell people that the dogs didn't pass, because yeah, there is a stigma to it. It's, when people aren't breeders, they aren't trainers, they aren't dog enthusiasts. Of course, they're going to look at it and be like, why are you breeding dogs that don't pass? Well, they need to get their head out of the gutter. Like, it's the reality of breeding. It's just, how do we get better? How do we better the breed if we're not posting these, failing scores? It's okay to fail. That's how we get better. So that's something that's my goal, is to get these dogs that have a difficult time passing, to get them to pass consistently. That's my big goal for the next 10 years.
Well, we wish you the best for the upcoming kennel. And last but not least, What do you think of Bully Girl magazine? Woo!
So far, so I actually, full transparency, I haven't heard of it since, you guys had reached out for the podcast. So my experience within the last couple weeks we've been talking, has been incredibly just fun. I can be camera shy sometimes, but I know that I can talk and jab away. So it really wasn't that big of a deal, but it was a little nerve wracking at first, but you've made it very, just easy and fun, and people have been nice. And I started doing my research on, the Bully Girl website, and might sign up for the magazine because I'm curious. It is
Please
really,
do.
yeah, it's really, it looks very educational, which I like to see in the dog world, and I love to see beautiful dogs too. My favorite bullies. So um, I think it's amazing. I think that a lot of people should look into it more, which I'm going to go dive more into it because you've made it such a fun experience. So
Well, we're glad you had fun with us. Please, let's see that gorgeous girl. Let's see her. Let's
here, baby.
bring her into the frame.
Come here, baby. Come here.
Oh, I love
He's
her.
like, no.
Oh, she's 7, right? You told us she was 7.
She is 7.
Oh.
Yeah. He's like, nope, nope, nope.
Oh. Oh no. Okay. Not right now. Later.
Ruger's over there sleeping. Do you want to see him one more time?
Oh, let's let him sleep. Poor guy. And he's heavy enough. He will be like,
I know. Break my back.
Okay. So this was great. This was our episode with Peggy Magaña. She's owner and founder of Cruise K9 Academy. If you're watching this, thanks for joining, and don't forget to follow Bully Girl Mag on Instagram. Visit BGM Warehouse to get some awesome bully breed apparel, and don't forget to purchase the latest issue of Bully Girl magazine. We'll be seeing you next time. Thanks and bye-bye.